What's going on, guys? I am here at my truck. It's a 95 Toyota. It's a Toyota truck. Outside of the US, it's called a Hilux. I've heard people that I know refer to it as SR5 because that's one of the models. This is just a base model truck. It's not the SR5, but it's just called Toyota truck. It's the precursor to the 4Runner. It's not 4Runner. It's kind of like the 4Runner, same engine and but it's kind of like it's a precursor to the Tacoma. That's what I meant to say. But basically, I'm changing my spark plugs today and spark plug wires. This truck comes with the 22RE 4-cylinder, which is 22RE is the engine code, or the 3VZE, which is right there, which is the code for the V6. 95 model. Like I said, it's a 6-cylinder, and if you're looking at a different vehicle and you want to know if it's 4 or 6-cylinder, the quick way, if it's older, is look for one of these big round things with all these wires coming out. There's one wire that goes away from the engine. Usually, it goes to a coil. If it doesn't have that one, then it'll only have. Then 6 cylinders will have 6 spark plug wires. 4 cylinders will have 4 spark plug wires. If it does have one of these coils where it's like it's wires leading away, then it would have a 6-cylinder would have 7 spark plug wire, or would have 7 wires, because this one goes from the distributor to the coil. Anyway, that's the basics of that. Reason I'm changing my wires too is they're really not that old, but I was off-roading, and as you can see, there's all this white junk all over it. You're like, what is that? That's what happens to silicone when you get battery acid on it. More specifically, when your power steering pulley starts rubbing on your battery because the battery's not tight enough. Rubs a hole in the side of the battery acid goes everywhere, and the paint and the silicone is the only stuff that really suffers. Rubber is very resilient when it comes to being exposed to battery acid. It doesn't really eat through it, and it doesn't eat through metal or any of that stuff. I mean, it will slowly, because it makes the metal kind of oxidize faster, but it's starting to rain on me. I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. So I've got one of my spark plugs out right here, and you want to be careful when you're taking your spark plugs out, more specifically when you're taking your wires off of the spark plugs. You would, so these like to really latch on, these little spark plug boots, they like to really latch on to the spark plug, and it's really kind of hard to get off. What you want to do is kind of spin the spark plug boot a little bit so that it loosens its grip on the spark plug, and then you can pull it off. You don't want to pull it off by the wire. You want to pull it off just by this here, just by holding the boot, if you can get your hand around it. If not, then they actually make a little tool that you can, it looks like long needle nose pliers that you can clip onto the boot, and you pull it off. But it's something like in this truck, I know this spark plug wire on the back right, it's kind of hard to get to. If you're changing your spark plug wires, it's a good idea to change one at a time. Luckily, these are numbered, so if they're not numbered, and you know what, you're like, oh man, I just started watching this video and I took all my spark plug wires off at the same time. Well, it's not really a good idea, but the way that engines are numbered, it's like if you're looking at the front of the engine, which this is the front where your timing belt is. So from the front back, you count left to right, 1, 2, and then you'll go back 1, 3, 4, then you go back another 1, 5, 6. So on your left side of the engine, this is left side, you will have odd numbers. Right side, you'll have even numbers. So left side is 1, 3, 5. Right side is 2, 4, 6. Typically, the front of the engine, if it's like this is called a longitudinally mounted engine, which means it's mounted long ways. So it's mounted front to back, which means the front of the engine is here, transmission is on the back side. If it's transverse mounted or transitude, I forget. The other mounting is left to right, so your transmission would sit either on the driver's side or the passenger side, which means the front of the transmission, or the front of the engine, would be on the opposite side. So you can start counting from the transmission side and count on it's like a sideways mounted 4-cylinder, 4, 3, 2, 1, because that's the back side of the engine, so you'll start counting down. So that's the basics of that. So if you pull all your spark plug wires off, hopefully that helps you enough. And you can look for the numbers here. So like, see, this is cylinder number 1. This one goes to cylinder number 1 off of the distributor cap. This one goes to 6. 3's down there, 5's down there. They're not in the order. Like, this is 1, 2's not going to be here, 3's not going to be there. It goes the firing order is different than the cylinder numerical order. If that makes enough sense. But once you actually get your spark plugs out and you're changing your spark plugs, you want to look like what I like to do is I line them up and I take pictures of them. So I'll line up like, okay, there's spark plug number 1, I put number 2 here, number 3 there, number 4 there. So left to right with the electrodes on top. I know that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you can look at the top and you can tell, like, okay, well, these all have if they all have the same amount of the same wear, like see, they have a little bit of browning on that around the porcelain, which is the white part. And the electrode it's still pretty good. These only have like 20,000 miles on them, so they're really not that bad. But compare these to pictures. You can find the pictures online that show, like, oh, well, hey, this is what it looks like if you have oil getting in your engine. Like if you have a leaky valve seal, there's not much you can do to fix that quickly. You'll have to like rip the engine apart and take it to a machine shop probably to have them change out the valve seals and stuff like that. So. But this is just normal wear. If they look like this, just keep this in mind. And there's like a little bit of browning on this electrode. They'll probably look a little bit worse than this. These have 20,000 miles. They can last up to 80,000 miles. But what I've seen on engines that run really hot, because it messes with the integrity of how tough the spark plug is. I've actually had spark plugs break on me while I'm trying to take them out. That's either from somebody over tightening it, or it's just been in there a long time. Truck's been sitting or something, and it's stuck in there. If you can't get it off with one of these little 8-inch long ratchet, then you really want to be careful while you're trying to loosen the spark plugs. And when you're tightening them, you have this little crush ring. So it's kind of like a hollow washer, I guess. It's made to crush a little bit so that it makes a good seal. And you'll know, like this one I put on, like, it's not crushed like crazy flat. It's just been crushed a little bit. So it's a good idea to not over tighten these, because with age they are going to get a little bit harder to get out, and you do risk breaking it off inside your engine if you're trying to or stripping it out. You don't want to change these out on a hot engine. I don't know who would really want to work on a hot engine, even if you're pressed for time. Heads nowadays on newer cars, probably on like mid 80s and up, it's all aluminum. They're all aluminum heads. Now the spark plug sits inside the head, so if you're working on a hot engine, it's easier to strip out the aluminum while you're putting the spark plug in. And speaking of putting the spark plugs in, another thing I like to do is start tightening it a little bit by hand. So get the spark plug in there, just like that, and start screwing it in by hand. One, because it's a little bit easier just to kind of thread it in a little bit, and two, because if you start putting it in crooked a little bit and you don't know, it's a lot easier to turn this even with a lot of tension. And if it's put in crooked a little bit, or you could actually cross thread your the threads where the spark plug is held in. So don't work on a hot engine and thread them in by hand. Let's see. That's pretty much it. Changing spark plugs and spark plug wires is pretty straightforward. You just don't want to over tighten them. You don't want to break your spark plug. Even if you're going to reuse your spark plug wires, you don't want to, like I said, you don't want to grab the wire and pull it off. You want to grab down here on the boot if you can. If you can't, I would suggest buying the tool to pull it off, because the tool is a lot cheaper than buying $40, $50, $60 spark plug wires. And then you have a tool for next time. So if you don't use the tool, you break the spark plug wires. Well, now you've got to buy spark plug wires, and where you could have spent that money on buying a tool. So it's a good way to convince your wife to buy another tool. It's yeah, she's like, oh, but honey, if this happens, and you know, it's a good thing to do. On this truck, it's a little bit harder to change this spark plug wire down here, which is number 6, the one on the back side, the back right. That's why I have this swivel. So I have a swivel, I have a 3-inch, and then I have a 6-inch extension. And then here, come on, get off. I guess I don't have to take it off. So you notice, if I have this spark plug inside, it doesn't want to fall out. So this is a spark plug socket. It's made to hold the spark plug, so it has like a little rubber insert on the inside. Some of them have magnets. I prefer the one with a magnet, but this is just the one with the one that I'm using right now is rubber. If you're working in a really oily engine, there's a chance that you can get oil on that little rubber. It's not bad on the rubber, really. Over time it would be, but it'll start to expand. But it's just like for just that little bit of exposure to the oil makes it where you won't be able to grab the old spark plug and pull it out. So once you have the socket on the spark plug and you loosen it up and you're ready to pull it out of the engine, spark plug might fall and you might have a little bit of trouble actually just getting it out. Gapping the spark plug is really not that bad. On this engine, the spark plug gap is 0.031. I'm going to put that in a little comment so it'll be more in the beginning, because I know that's something that most people look up is what the spark plug gap is on their engine. But you can get on there. All right, so this is the spark plug gap tool. You notice it gets thicker the higher the numbers go, and what you would basically do is just you push down on the spark plug. So you can either go like that and just kind of tap it, and then check the thickness. Tap it a little bit more, tap it a little bit harder, check the thickness until you get it down. Either down, hopefully you just get it down to where you want it and you don't have to open it back up, or you can use a little spark plug gap tool to pry out. These are like $1. I've messed up a ton of them because working on motorcycles, the spark plug gap is almost all the way at the bottom of this this tool, so this metal ends up bending. So anyway, this is basically everything that you would need to know. If you really get stuck, then like have a mechanic that come and check it out, check out your work. If you happen to put the spark plug wires on wrong, like it's supposed to go on cylinder 2 and it went on cylinder 1, then you want to switch that, and it's not going to run right. If it runs at all, it's not going to run right. So you want to make sure that's right. You want to make sure that these are. You can usually hear them snap on because of the down inside a little metal clip. It snaps on to the outside. You'll hear it snap whenever you're sliding that spark plug boot on. Make sure you don't bump any electrical connections, so it causes weird problems. You're like, man, I just changed the spark plugs. How did that happen? Or I just changed the spark plugs, and why isn't it working? Oh, because I bumped the plug that goes onto the distributor. So now the sensor that's inside of the distributor doesn't work. Or oh man, I knocked off one of my fuel injector connectors, and now I've got a misfire. So anyway, but I hope this was helpful. Leave a comment, say like, hey, you could have talked more about this. I'm kind of stuck. I'm kind of new to this, and I'll keep that in mind for when I do the next video. Yeah, like, subscribe, comment, positive comments, negative comments aren't wanted. And yeah, it's share, all that good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was informative. Well, no, it was informative. I hope it was explained well enough. So thanks for watching, and you guys have a great day. God bless.